He descended from his center in the Himalayas on the 8th of July 1977 in a body which he created himself. He's not born in the ordinary way. It's a body created in a way which is unique in the whole history of the world, which allows him to live at our level and at the same time bring in his full consciousness as the Christ, to the love of God embodied in a man in its perfection. It's the most unique event that has ever taken place in the world, I would say, and he will live in that body on this planet looking as he does today for the next 2,500 years, more or less. And that body allows him to be like an ordinary man, at the same time to appear and to disappear. He doesn't need to sleep, he doesn't need to eat, he doesn't even have a bed, he doesn't lie down, he can sit down, but he doesn't ever go to sleep. He just works all 24 hours, every second of it. His consciousness embraces the world. If people read Share International magazine, of which I'm the editor, we have hundreds of letters sent in all the time of experiences of people who have contact with Maitreya, or sometimes the Master Jesus, or another master, but very often Maitreya himself, in some extraordinary situation. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's profound, sometimes it lifts them up. They're so depressed, they're at the point of suicide or despair or whatever, and he lifts them up just by being there, just by seeing them, by smiling at them, or giving them some kind of experience. If you don't want to believe it, there's nothing I could say that would prove it, that's for sure. I have been doing this work for 28, I think it is, 27, 28 years, and if people are so cynical or so skeptical that there's nothing you could say. You could bring the Christ in and say, here he is. You say, well, that's not the Christ. It's certainly not the Christ I'm expecting, or something. There would be something wrong with the proof. To prepare his own way, he has flooded the world with miracles. Over the last 10, 12, 15 years, the world has been flooded with miracles for all the different religions. If among Christians, there are the appearances of the Madonna, the mother of Jesus, at Medjugorje in Yugoslavia, in places all over the world, figures of the Madonna which weep tears or blood, and it's analysed, and it's human blood, but has no droplets. It doesn't, it just goes on dripping. It doesn't harden. And in the Hindu community, there were 4 days when the gods, during the puja, the gods made of wood, bronze, silver, steel, stone, metals and stones and copper and all kinds, lapped up the milk which was offered in cups and spoons and little dishes of wood. As soon as they were offered to the gods for 4 days, that milk disappeared. Of course, nobody can explain it, but that milk, of course, was not drunk by the gods made of copper and teak and wood and bronze and all the rest of it. The milk was made to disappear by Maitreya and a group of masters who specialize in that particular kind of miracle. And so on. Every religion. There's a young girl in Lebanon who weeps every day, weeps crystals, razor-sharp crystals. If you touch it, you would cut your hand. And she weeps them out of her eyes every day without, a great handful of crystals. Religious people, they say, well, if the Christ is coming back, I need a sign, I need a sign. And Maitreya once said through me, he gave 140 communications through me, And in one of them, number 10, I think it is, he said, "Those who search for signs will find them, but my method of manifestation is more simple." He doesn't need the signs. You might not need the signs. I don't need the signs, but they're there for anyone who needs them. And all, in my experience, all the religious groups need a sign. And they say, well, if you're right, the Christ comes, show me the signs. And they are everywhere. There are crosses of light which appear in hundreds, thousands of windows all over the world. In, you name a country, there is some manifestation like that. The cross circles, the circles of light on buildings, have been coming, to my knowledge, for about 2.5 years. They started, or I first heard about them in America, then Canada, and then they moved across the United States and Europe, and now they're in Australia, New Zealand, you name it, wherever. And these are made by what I call the Space Brothers. That is, those who use the UFOs coming from the planets for various work which they do in our atmosphere, cleansing our atmosphere, mopping up so far as they can within the law our nuclear energy which we release into the atmosphere through our nuclear power stations and nuclear experimentation all the time. It's deadly. It's one of the greatest causes of ill health, causes the greatest number of deaths in the world, and they, although we don't know it, they have methods by which they have an implosion and they can neutralize this energy to an extent, not totally, because they're not allowed to totally, it would be an infringement of our free will, but so far as our free will allows, they go as far as that. Crop circles are everywhere. They could be in water on the side of mountains. They're only on crops because crops are cyclical. You know, you have a crop, a corn or so on, and it gets mature, then they harvest it and so on, so you don't see the crop circle anymore, but it comes back again next year. Crop circles are not to do with Maitreya, but it is to do with the Space Brothers, yeah. But why are most of the crop circles in the south of England? Because Maitreya is here. That's the reason. You see, the hierarchies of each planet are in communication. We are not, but the masters are. And it's a solar system. Each planet works in relation to every other planet, and they affect each other. That hand is not an ordinary imprint. He didn't put his hand on the mirror. That hand is thought onto the mirror. It is a thought form imprinted on the mirror. As you can see, it's a total three-dimensional hand, like a photograph. It's not, if you put your hand on a mirror, it's just where you touch it, it will make on the dust of the mirror, it will make a few little marks. But there, it's a total three-dimensional, just like a very accurate photograph of a hand. And this is not the best version of it, but this is thought by Maitreya onto it's a gift to the world before we actually see him in the world. It's the nearest he can come to everybody, and the way he can help everybody if they invoke his help. On the 11th, I think it is, 11th of June, 1988, in Nairobi, a most extraordinary event. There's a woman in Nairobi called Mary Akatsa, who is a fundamentalist Christian. She doesn't believe in Maitreya at all. She believes in the Christ. She's a very devout Christian. She is so fundamentalist, I don't know what her denomination is, but it would be very, very, very fundamentalist. She's not at all interested in anything I've said of this story. She doesn't believe Maitreya or the masters or the plan or anything like that. She just believes in the Christ. She believes the Christ will return. And one day she holds a meeting, or maybe twice a week, but at least once a week, but I think it's twice a week. She held this meeting just outside the town, and she has 6,000 followers. And we have photographs taken there by members of the group who showing them 6,000 people. And she said, God has spoken to me, and we're going to be visited by a great being, somebody very, very important. And suddenly, just beside her, stood this figure of Maitreya, dressed in a long white robe with a white headdress with a blue band round the headdress. And he spoke to the crowds, and they all said, ah. They thought he was the Christ. They immediately saw him as the Christ or Jesus, because they're Christians, you know, so they would think Christ Jesus. So, Jesus, Christo, Christo, help me, save me. They were all there for healing. She's an extraordinary healer because Maitreya gives healing through that woman, Mary Akatsa. There's a man called Job Mutungi, who was the editor of the Kenya Times at the time, the Swahili editor of the Kenya Times, and he wrote it up in the Kenya Times. Did the Christ come to Nairobi this day? We got in touch with him, and he came over here and interviewed me for the story and so on, and he described it. He said it was quite extraordinary. He said the Saturday before, the week before, he was in the town, centre of the town, and he saw a star going round and round, it wasn't an aeroplane, it was a star, and it was silently going round and round the town. He said it reminded me of the Star of Bethlehem, you know, that the wise men followed into the town, but he didn't know anything about it. He just saw it. He said, oh my, this must be a portent. This must mean something very big is going to happen. But he didn't know what, and nothing happened except that, which was big enough. The week later, Mary Akatsa said, a great being is coming, and just suddenly, miraculously, out of nowhere, came Maitreya. He spoke to the crowd in perfect, unaccented Swahili for maybe 15, 20 minutes, something like that. And he told Mary Akatsa at one point to put her hand in his pocket. And she said in the pocket were 4 crosses made of gold, big crosses like that. And she pulled one out, and we have a photograph of her holding the cross up like that. Big cross, about 14, 15 inches high, like that, made of gold. And then he healed about 40 or 50 people standing in the area where he was. Then he said, now I have to go, but I will be back with, they said, a bucket full of blessings. But my master said he didn't say a bucket, but they translated it as bucket. He said a vessel. I will be back with a vessel full of blessings. And he said, I have to go. And somebody there, one of the group there, said, well, I have a car. Can I take you to the station? So he got in the car, but he only went about 100 yards. And they said, I have to get out here. So he got out of the car and walked away. And he took a few steps and just disappeared, literally disappeared again. That was all over the world. CNN, BBC, Japanese television, it just covered the world for 2 days. But, you know, it wasn't football, it was the Christ, it wasn't too important, and so it just disappeared. It just became nothing. He is not a religious teacher. And if people think they're going to see their religious teachers bring a new religion or going to make Christianity more, bigger or something, they're wrong. He comes for every single human being, whether they're religious or non-religious, whatever the religion is, whatever their philosophy, wherever they are, he comes really to teach. To teach them, teach us who we are, where we come from, what is the purpose of life. We don't know any of these things. What happens when we die? What are the laws governing our life? We don't know these things. But the Ageless Wisdom teaching teaches these. And he comes to reenact what he began through Jesus 2,000 years ago and to complete it in this time. Then his work vis-a-vis humanity will be finished at the end of this coming age, which will be about 2,500 years. Humanity needs a big, dramatic happening to see reality, to understand what it's been doing, because they've been living in a fog, thinking that you could go on in this deeply divided and separative and unjust way forever. It's not going to happen like that. No way could you go on. Perhaps 2 or 3, 4, 5 more years with the have-nots clamoring at the gates of the haves, you know, to get into the citadel. That's what the thousands of people from all over the world are clamoring to get into the developed world. They want food for their family, they want work. They can't find it at home. So they clamor anyway, legally or illegally, and there will come a time, because now they see it all. They see it on the internet, they see it on film, they see everything, they see it on television, they know what's going on. There's no way we can hide, keep ourselves to ourselves and hide the facts of our over-resplendent life. They can't do it. And these people with nothing, who have nothing to eat, nothing to give their families, they're not going to put up forever with that. So this is the time decision. We have to decide to share or we die. It's as simple as that. Not because Maitreya is going to make us die, but because the law of cause and effect will make it so. If we share, we will have peace. And it's the only way to share, because if you don't share, there will never be justice in the world. And if there's no justice, there will never be peace in the world. And if there's no peace in the world, there'll be no world, because now we can destroy all things on earth.